Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this session on supplements and if they can actually help your menopause. Menopause, very topical at the moment, and supplements is a really, really big area. I think as menopause is becoming more popular and talked about more in the media, it is certainly becoming a big area, and it's something I'm asked a lot about. Now, I have already done this session a couple of months ago, but a few people said to me, "Oh, can you do it again?" So here I am again talking about supplements. So you may know me already, but if you don't, I'm Charlotte Hunter. I'm a registered nutritional therapist and functional medicine practitioner. I work with mainly menopausal women now. I've worked with lots of people in the past, all kinds of clients with all kinds of different needs. But since my own menopause after hysterectomy when I was 44, I've become more and more interested in menopause specifically. And I'd say I have a special interest in hysterectomy and surgical side of menopause, and actually postmenopausal as well. But saying that, I see lots of clients from those who have just hormones that are going a bit wrong, all the way to who perhaps went through menopause 30 years ago. So it's a really diverse range of clients. I think my reason for focusing on menopause is that you can do so much with nutrition and lifestyle alongside HRT or without HRT for women who aren't in a position to use HRT. It can be a really lonely time, confusing, and every single menopause will be different for every woman. So I think it's an amazing area to work in, and an area that I really feel that I can make a difference. If that's sharing my own experience, but also using, I suppose, more technical approach with food and nutrition. I've noticed that on a lot of my talks that I do see many of my nutrition colleagues on the call, which is great, or perhaps listening later. And I really hope you do enjoy this discussion, but just to manage your expectations that it really is for our lovely clients. But thank you for being here, and I do appreciate the support. So the way I work is either individually with clients, or I do group work. I also do work with practitioners offering mentoring and training, and I do have a longer program that I'm hoping to bring out later in the year. I keep saying it's coming out. So some of you may be members of the Menopause Mastery membership, which I ran for 6 months, which is brilliant. But I have decided to focus more on the longer term plan of launching the course. I also work for KBMO Diagnostics, which is a food sensitivity testing company. So again, if you're a practitioner, you might have seen me pop up with regard to that. So just a couple of points. I will share the recording later if you want to listen again, or you want to share it with any friends. You're very welcome to do that. I usually upload these to our YouTube channel. Please ask any questions, add your questions to the chat. More than happy to go through those as they come up. And also, I can't give any specific advice regarding supplements and any medically diagnosed conditions. If you do have any inquiries or queries about conditions, you can email me. Or if you have any questions that you just don't want to ask publicly, because I appreciate this is a public space, and you may want to keep it completely confidential. And also, I'm sure you're not if it's menopause. This probably doesn't apply. But if you are pregnant, breastfeeding, taking medication, under any kind of medical supervision, please consult your healthcare practitioner before taking any food supplements or necessarily following any of my advice. That's just that disclaimer we have to pop in every time. So what are we going to be covering today? Well, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the female cycle and menopause. Now, when we get to menopause, it's so easy to forget about what our bodies were actually designed to do and why we go into menopause in the first place. We'll be looking at botanical and dietary supplements for menopause in a general sense, and also the considerations you should think about when you're choosing your supplements, or looking at information online or, in the supermarket or health food shop. And I often say this, that I really honestly don't believe you can simply eat, meditate, or stretch your way through menopause. I think those things help, but it really is a team effort from lots of angles, whether that's diet, relaxation, exercise, HRT, supplements, whatever it is, it's very often a combined effort. I don't think there's just one thing that we can do to support our menopause, whether we're symptomatic, and we're getting all those horrible things like hot flushes or skin problems, or you're sailing through it. There are still things you can do to support your body for the longer term. Now, what we're not covering, and it's possibly a strange thing to, so I've just lost my mouse, might be a strange thing to say, but I think it's important to manage your expectations as to what is going to be coming up. So this talk is about exploring some of the considerations when choosing your supplements. So my intention is not to upset, offend, or discredit any of the really brilliant products that are on the market. I'm simply opening up the conversation because what I want to do is highlight the importance of individualized and personalized nutritional medicine, not just to go into the shop and go, oh, that product says menopause, I'm in menopause, that must be the right thing for me. So I'm not going to be telling you which supplements to take. So you might think, well, hang on, it's a bit confusing. And in some ways, I hope that you are, because the marketing around menopause supplements can affect our judgment. It's really unclear, it's blurred, and dare I say in some cases based on some shady science. So supplements for menopause really are a case of the good, the bad, and the ugly. But at no point will I be naming or shaming anyone, because I think there's a place for everything, but it's about working out what's right for you. That was a bit of a waffly sentence, but hopefully you get what I'm trying to do here. So my mouse is doing all kinds of strange things this morning. So our menstrual cycle. Now, I've stolen this lovely diagram from Laura Brydon. I think it was Laura Brydon. Anyway, it's very beautiful. I use it quite often. I think it's a really nice visual representation of our menstrual cycles and how they work. Now, some of you are going, yeah, we know all this, but for those of you who don't, and it's amazing how many people don't know this, but these are the real basics that you need to understand even as you go through menopause. So our hormones change throughout our monthly cycles. Now, you have to remember that we're still quite primitive beings, and our physiology really hasn't changed much over the years. So the prime goal of all of these hormones that you see is to prepare for reproduction. That's it. That's what our bodies are designed to do. So if we look at the cycle as a whole, we've got day one down at this end. And this is where our estrogen and progesterone levels are low. And that signals the pituitary gland to produce follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH. Often when you have labs done, you'll see FSH on there. This begins the process of maturing a follicle. They're the follicles on your ovary, and it's the small sac that holds the egg. At ovulation, usually mid-cycle, that we see around here, the estrogen levels are higher and they trigger a sharp rise in something called luteinizing hormone, which is LH, something again which is often tested on your bloods. And this also comes from the pituitary gland and releases an egg from the follicle. So this ruptured follicle is known as the corpus luteum, which secretes progesterone and estrogen, and it continues to prepare the uterus for pregnancy. It's just getting everything ready, all juicy, plump, and lovely for a baby to grow. If the egg isn't fertilized, the estrogen progesterone levels drop, and typically around 28 days or anywhere, a few weeks either side of that, your period will start. So to summarize, the menstrual cycle occurs in 3 phases. So we have the follicular, which is like the preparation and the build up to ovulation. We have ovulatory, which is ovulation when that egg pops out. And then that phase before your period called the luteal phase. And these hormone changes vary from women to women, or woman to woman even. There's no blueprint. And the hormonal shifts can be gradual, it can be fast and furious, or you can get a lot of highs and lows through this time. And it's the hormone shifts that can be affected by stress, eating patterns, sleep, deficiencies, and of course when menopause comes along. So whatever happens during your menstrual cycles prior to menopause can dictate often what's going to happen to you in menopause. I mean, it's not quite as simple as that, but we have to think about what's happened before in terms of what's happening now. So if we look at our menstrual cycle in menopause, or how it changes through menopause, and this is the diagram from Lara Bryden, apologies, I'm not quite sure where the last one came from, but it is lovely all the same. This, you know, we've looked at the highs and lows of estrogen, progesterone through our cycles. And this summary that you see is really the patterns that we see throughout our lives from childhood over to menopause. And you'll see the standout points really are puberty and perimenopause. And of course, menopause there as well. But all of this will be unique to you. I mean, there is no set pattern, whether you're in childhood, your reproductive years, or your menopausal years. So it's having an understanding that it's very changeable, especially in perimenopause. This is when it all sort of goes a bit nuts, doesn't it? We have this system, this groove we generally fall into, and then we get to perimenopause, it becomes more volatile. So we've got highs and we've got lows, and where you've got some months where your hormones will be off the chart, another month they'll be completely tanking. But your perimenopause and your menopausal years, very much like your preceding cycles, will be unique to you. So let's have a look at hormones. Step back a moment. Hormones really do affect everything in our body, and hormones affect other hormones. So it's a really complex picture. And of course, I'm only going to scratch the surface here, but we know that hormones will affect things like our metabolism, our blood pressure, reproduction, which we've talked about, your blood sugar levels, your kidney, your liver function, your sleep, how you age is a massive one. You know, we know that women, as they go through menopause, their aging just kind of, you know, way overtakes men of the same age, and then we sort of even up again. Appetite, your libido, and so many other things. I mean, hormones affect everything. So hormones are chemical messengers. They're produced by special glands around our body, and there are about 150 of these chemicals that we know as hormones. They race through our bodies daily, and they tell our brain and the other organs what to do. So really important. They're also controlled by feedback systems, a bit like the thermostat in your home. So if a particular hormone is too high or too low, the body is going to respond accordingly and make sure that those levels are well maintained. There are lots of things that can upset this balance, and we've mentioned these in relation to the previous couple of slides, but things like stress, diseases, conditions, alcohol, drugs, lack of sleep, deficiency, well, repeating myself, deficiencies again. And in females, the main hormones are estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and the focus tends to be around their influence on reproductive health, but they do affect so many other parts of our body. But I think menopause discussions mainly focus around estrogen for good reason, which we'll have a look in the next slide, but hormones really do affect so much more than just reproduction. And you'll see from this lovely diagram here what I'm talking about. We find estrogen receptors all over our body. They've got very far-reaching effects on reproduction, and their effects are literally head to toe. And this is exactly why the symptoms we witness in perimenopause and menopause are so diverse and complex. I mean, if you just look at that diagram briefly, we can see up at the top, we've got the central nervous system. So we have things like the hot flushes, sleep, depression, cognitive changes, migraines, which, you know, tends to be the real deal breakers for women during menopause. They're the ones that really get us. in terms of our ability to function optimally day to day. But there are all the other functions and symptoms as well. So changes to our skin and our hair. We have metabolic changes. You know, our weight can change, and where we store our weight and how we use carbohydrates and other energy sources. We have issues around libido and the urogenital system, which is really complex and debilitating in some cases. And then we've got musculoskeletal system, where we've got the good old joint pains, which I'm sure some of you will have experienced. So these are just a couple of examples, but it shows us how diverse and complex the effects of hormones are, but also the symptoms that you can experience. So let's have a quick look at, you know, what we mean by menopause. I think in natural medicine or any of the complementary approaches, menopause tends to get lumped together. But I think working with women, you know, you start to notice there are lots of phases besides just perimenopause and menopause. For example, think about the hormone imbalances. Those are very early signs that things are changing. So we've got early, mid, and late perimenopause almost, post-menopause, surgical menopause, chemical menopause, and other forms of sudden menopause as well. So it's very difficult to just view menopause as almost two distinct phases where, well, we've got perimenopause, the bit before menopause, that's it, you're done. You know, it's much, much more complex than that. But I'd say, you know, in most women, it will naturally occur between the ages of 45 and 52. That number seems to change every time I read, but generally speaking, we see that. Excuse me. Technically, menopause is 12 months after your last menstrual period. We know the preceding years as perimenopause, and this can last for, you know, anything from a few months to, you know, several years prior to menopause. The research suggests that 1.2 billion women will be menopaused by 2030, with 47 million new entrants each year. I love that phrase, new entrants. I'm not sure I'd like to be described as a new entrant. Sounds like some sort of club, doesn't it? Approximately 85% of these women will experience symptoms. So, you know, there are those wonderful women who cruise through menopause, and I'm very happy for them. But I think most of the ladies I see will have some sort of symptoms. And if they don't have severe symptoms, many of them just want to feel better. You know, what can I do to protect my body? I know that I'm now at a higher risk of certain conditions. There may be underlying risk factors like cardiovascular disease, or they may have seen their mum go through menopause, go, you know, I don't want that, you know, I want to take more control of it. So there's lots of reasons women come to see me, certainly for menopause issues. So botanical and dietary supplements are often used alongside HRT and other prescribed medications, but many women don't discuss their supplements with their doctors. I mean, if I think about it, I probably don't talk much about my supplements with my doctor, partly because the time, you don't get long in there, and sometimes they sort of poo-poo them, I think, you know, that they're often going, oh, well, you know, you can take them if you think they're help, you know, you can take them. So it's a bit of a mixed opinion there from our medical friends. I've really had good experiences talking about supplements, but I know some of my clients have struggled a little. So with menopause, and I think I've touched upon this already, but there is more to menopause than just estrogen. You know, it's much more complicated. You know, I've just touched upon hormones in general, and I'm hoping that you've seen that already. And when I say hormones, when it comes to hormones, everything affects everything. You know, it's so true. But menopause is more than that. It's more than just estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. We have to think about the relationships with our other hormones. So, for example, DHEA, thyroid, insulin, cortisol, oxytocin, melatonin. You know, these are all words that you might think, what's she talking about? But they're all really important hormones in our bodies. And hormones work in harmony. So if one is out, they're all going to be out. And we also have to remember that your sex hormones are generally a good reflection of what is going on in your body as a whole. So if they're, if you experience symptoms relating to imbalanced hormones, whichever hormone that might be, or hormones they might be, that there's always going to be some connection to another hormone. And I think if we link this back to our subject today of, how do we choose the right supplement? Well, it makes it really complicated, doesn't it? And of course, you can Google your menopause symptoms and go, okay, so I've got hot flushes. Oh, I need to take some sage, or I have vaginal dryness. Oh, I better take some sea buckthorn oil. That's almost the approach that I don't think works. And if you go down that route, often you can find yourself with 2 carrier bags full of supplements, and then you don't know what's working. And honestly, I have clients who come in with their bags of supplements. And we go, okay, let's just get them all out and see what's going on here. And these are many of the supplements that I see my clients taking. Not all of them, there's more, believe it or not. But you'll see some of these in menopause supplements combined or separately. And I think in relation to menopause and supplements, the research isn't particularly robust. I think there are lots of small scale studies or qualitative or anecdotal evidence. And I think we could potentially go through each ingredient. We could assess their efficacy by reviewing, all the peer review papers, all of the presenting evidence. And personally, I think nothing better than sharing all my lovely geeky research with you. But I suggest some of you would be totally bored and would leave the call. But if anyone wants to talk to me about geeky supplements, please do. But what I want to do is just select a couple. It's a bit like menopause bingo, isn't it? We should have done a game here, or it feels like we should. But let's have a look at black cohosh. This is a really popular, well-known one. The clinical trials aren't that robust. And I think, we can look at some of the published data, which suggests that it could help vasomotor symptoms, so hot flushes. And I think in some cases it does, some cases it doesn't. The same as St. John's wort. I think St. John's wort has got some really good research. It does help mood anxiety, but the only problem with it is there are lots of contraindications with other medications. So you've got to be really careful with St. John's wort, really powerful. And just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe. You do have to use it, I would say, under the advice of a practitioner. Red clover, again, another really popular ingredient. It's not supported by the data, even though theoretically it should support estrogen due to its estrogen mimicking structure. So, just a few examples. So there are some products, a bit like St. John's wort, you should use with caution. For example, maca is amazing for energy. It's good for testosterone. And for some people with hot flushes, it can help. But if you've got elevated cortisol, maybe it's not the best thing for you. Also, lemon balm, amazingly calming. But if you're taking very, very high doses, you have to be careful if you're taking thyroid meds. So there's a lot we could talk about here. And I have a feeling we could end up going down, a few rabbit holes and getting lost. But I suppose my point is that there are a lot of potential things you could take for menopause, but are they right for you? And is that approach of symptom, I suppose, sort of looking for symptoms and then finding a solution, is that going to be the best thing for you to do? And how many of these would you potentially have to take? Or would you take a supplement and then potentially have things in that combined supplement that you don't necessarily need? So it's a bit of a minefield, to say the least. But what I'm trying to do today is keep this as practical as possible for you. So let's think about 2 questions. One, why are you choosing a supplement? What's the reason for choosing a supplement? Or did you just wander into the shop and go, oh, menopause supplement, that's for me? And what are your unique challenges? What's going on for you? What do you feel like you need? What are the main symptoms that you have? Or does it go a bit deeper than that? Are there, I suppose, categories of symptoms or big picture stuff going on, which I'll go into in a moment? So as I said, it'd be really easy to buy a generic product containing everything, but would it be the right thing for you to take? So this is a question I always like to ask. Where do you source your information on your supplements? Now, I appreciate some of you will already be taking menopause specific formulas, and if they're working for you, that is brilliant. I'm, really pleased to hear that, and I'd love to hear any feedback you have on supplements that have worked for you. Personally, I don't believe anyone, especially those on medications, should use high doses of anything without support and guidance of a professional. If you're taking antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications, and anything in that category, it's a massive category of drugs, take some advice before you use other supplements, especially some of these really, really hardcore, strong herbal nutrients. In practice, I honestly can tell you that I rarely use menopause supplements or formulas, especially for the odd practitioner-only products, which I think are beyond the scope of today's discussion. But many of my clients will come to me with menopause symptoms. And when I ask why they're taking a particular product, they don't usually know. They're like, not quite sure. It's menopause. My friend was taking it and she felt great. If I ask if they're working, they might scratch their heads, go, not really sure. I don't really take it every day. I sort of forget. And that's so easily done if you have, say, 10 different supplements that you're having to take. Go, I might take this a few days, might take this one a few days, or then I forgot, and I forgot to buy it. It gets quite complicated if you're playing menopause bingo with your supplements. Recently, one of my clients had been taking a product that was costing nearly £200 a month for a 30-day supply. This is one product. I mean, the packaging was beautiful, but was she feeling better? No. Was it a bad supplement? Absolutely not. I mean, it was a brilliant supplement. But there was other stuff that was going on that was exacerbating her menopause. It wasn't just about taking a supplement. And amazingly, what I do find is that many of my perimenopausal clients aren't technically perimenopausal. And, when we go through their case, we talk about their history, their symptoms, what's going on for them. We're actually seeing the effects of stress alongside imbalanced blood sugar, nutritional deficiencies, which are almost triggering something that I like to call wonky hormone syndrome. I did make that up. It's not actually a thing, by the way. But a lot of my case studies that I have for my clients really demonstrate this. There's this feeling that, it's all gone wrong. My hormones are a mess. I'm in perimenopause. And yes, potentially things are changing and they're on that road to perimenopause. But sometimes we can jump on that a bit too soon. Go, well, hang on a minute. Let's just look at the biggest stuff first before we start using that label. Because once you get that label, you're not going to lose it. Believe me. So I suppose let's put it another way. Do you need a menopause face cream? Do you need a menopause toothpaste or a menopause shampoo or a menopause foundation? We've got to make our choices based on our unique needs. And just because it's got menopause written on it doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. Like I said, there are amazing menopause products out there. I'm not, and I do use some, admittedly. But I'm, again, just trying to open up this conversation that we need to be thinking about some of the bigger picture stuff before thinking I need a specific menopause product. And if you've worked with me as a practitioner, you'll know this slide very well. So this is a slide that I use pretty much every single talk I do, whether it's with practitioners or it's with clients. And my view is that when it comes to menopause nutrition, you have to get the basics right first. It's all about the big picture, not the pixels. And these are the four areas that I focus on, whether I'm interpreting a functional test, a hormone test, a stool test, if I'm talking through my client's history, let's look at stress, inflammation, insulin. Insulin is a hormone that helps us use and store energy from our carbohydrates. It's a big deal in hormonal health. and our genetics as well. So this is the stuff that matters. This is the stuff that you can influence to support your menopause, whether you're on supplements, HRT, a combination of both, or you're doing something entirely different. This is still the basics of managing and mastering your menopause. And I think we can take it a step further by thinking about, our absorption. So alongside the fundamentals of stress, inflammation, insulin, and our genetics, we need to think about our digestion. Are we eating the right foods? Are we breaking them down? Are we able to access the nutrients by absorbing them? And finally, are we going to the toilet at least once a day? Are we getting rid of all of that junk? So these are the basics. These are the things we have to get right. And we have to think about these before we even consider looking at a menopause supplement or a herbal support or whatever it might be. Because if you do all these things, your supplement is going to work much better. That was a bit preachy, sorry. It matters though, it's really important. So this is what I'd like you to think about. Menopause doesn't happen overnight. And this might be something you can look at when we finish today. Just jot some ideas down. Menopause doesn't happen overnight. Well, actually, in my case, it did happen overnight, but the symptoms and how we experience it doesn't just happen overnight. And the functional medicine perspective encourage you to consider how you've reached your current destination. So where are you on the menopause spectrum? Where are you along this arrow? If you think about when you started puberty and when you went through menopause and reached postmenopause, if you've got there, So where are you on the spectrum? What is your unique hormone story? I mean, I often refer to mine as a hormone horror story because I had, I went through so many different things that led me to my menopause. So, for example, I had polycystic ovaries, endometriosis, adenomyosis. I had infertility issues. I had fertility treatments. I had issues with precancerous cells, my cervix. The list goes on. I won't bore you, but there's lots of stuff that was going on. And I can plot this along my timeline, which gives me insight into where I am now. And what are your unique health and lifestyle drivers? What's going on in your life? Do you exercise? How's your diet? How's your diet been in the past? So there's lots of things that you can think about just to make you really question where your areas or the areas that you need to focus on really are. And I think the biggest one that I see in my practice is stress. There are lots of areas that I could focus on. And I think stress really is one of those building blocks for good hormonal health. And if we go back to thinking about the foundations as well, stress is a big one. So cortisol is the key hormone that we discuss when we're thinking about stress. So it's released when we're stressed, and among other things, it helps regulate blood sugar and is involved in that fight or flight response. And if we find our cortisol elevated for too long, whether that's from chronic unresolved stress or acute stresses that come out of nowhere, it can be a big problem for our health. So we've seen imbalances in gut flora as a consequence of chronically elevated cortisol, increased food sensitivities, accelerated aging, which we definitely don't want, depression, adrenal dysfunction, burnout. And in relation to our hormones specifically, if we have this cortisol dominance, it can affect how much estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone you make. And during perimenopause and menopause, where the machinery is starting to wind down, we don't want something getting in the way of our hormone production. Cortisol increases glucose. It reduces lean muscle mass. It can lower our libido. causes fatigue. And it also encourages your body to make belly fat, which further upsets your hormones. So you start creating this vicious cycle of hormone imbalance and elevated cortisol. And the big one that I see clinically is the dysregulation of our glucose, our insulin, and our hormone balance as a result. We naturally, as we move through perimenopause, we become more insulin resistant. So we don't hear the signals from that really important hormone insulin that is telling us to access, utilize, and store carbohydrates. It all goes a bit wrong. And, it's creating the perfect storm. Now, there are lots of products and remedies. And if you go back to the menopause bingo page with all the different nutrients, ingredients, there's a lot of stuff out there. Many of them are specific to individual symptoms. And I wouldn't be doing my job right today if I didn't tell you the kind of supplements that I use in practice. And I think it's quite surprising because my favorite supplement isn't even a menopause supplement. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it now. So I wasn't actually going to include anything about specific products, but I think it shows you how I work with supplements. I think it also backs up everything I've said about getting your foundations right and working on the bigger picture before thinking, I need a remedy for my hot flush, or I need a remedy for, I don't know, my dry skin, or gut problems, whatever it might be. Let's work on the fundamentals first. And it's all about the big picture, as I've said. How do we support the wider processes that support the proper and optimal function of our hormones in a functional and practical way? And there are some key nutrients that I like to work with my clients. So magnesium, B vitamins, vitamin D, zinc, iron sometimes, essential fats, and optimal protein in the diet. Now, I discovered the product that you can see on the screen now, New Mind Wellness, completely by accident. And now it's my go-to personally, but also for a lot of my clients. And I've already said a little bit about my experience, but my story is no secret. And I think, like many menopausal women, I'm massively stressed. I know I shouldn't be, and I should be, preaching from my nutritional ivory tower, but no, I'm stressed. So I'm going through the most acrimonious divorce. Sometimes I feel like I'm on a TV program. It's that horrible. I have a child with ASD and PDA. I have lots of plates spinning with regard to my business. If you've worked with me, certainly on the phone or Zoom, you'll have no doubt heard my noisy house renovations, I'm trying to think of a polite word for my pack of hooligan chihuahuas in the background. And on top of all of that, I've had COVID twice, I've had recurring shingles, and I've also suffered from post-herpetic neuralgia from the shingles, which has then triggered loads of migraines on top of menopause. So it's a stressy picture. And then on top of that, throw in, my dad had a bypass, my mother's partner had bowel cancer, but this isn't anything unusual. I sound like I'm just reading off this very long shopping list of problems, but none of this is particularly unusual when you get your, close to your 50s, where you've got a lot on your plate, whether it's elderly parents or challenging children, or, menopause, unlike a few hundred years ago, we don't just stop. This is a time where things are often changing, positively and negatively, but it's a shift. I think, many of us have started new careers, or, taken on new challenges, or dealing with children who've left and gone off to university. There's always so many things going on. And I think from my experience, I started taking New Mind, gosh, it was quite a few months ago now. But after a couple of weeks, the first thing I noticed was that my taste returned. So 12 months after COVID, I didn't lose my sense of taste. It just changed, and everything seemed to taste like soapy grapefruit flavored plastic. That's the best I can describe it as. And my smell as well. Everything just this really bizarre sort of smell. But that has definitely got better. It's not perfect, but it's definitely improved. I'm sleeping better. I think I'm a bit calmer. But it also provides those vital nutrients I need for my health, including zinc, iron, magnesium, vitamin D, and B vitamins as well. Now, I've never taken a menopause supplement, although they do have a place for some ladies, and there are some brilliant products out there. But I think, you know, working on those foundations is the important part. So why New Mind? Now, I have got the images here for the 5-in-1 product. There is a 6-in-1 product, and that's if you find the variety with probiotics, which is fab. But it's an all-in-one stress support. You know, previously I've used these ingredients in separate products, cost way more money for me and my clients, and now it's all in one. It's a convenient product. Yes, I take other nutrients. I'm in menopause, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on for me, but not necessarily a menopause product, as I've already said. But what I like about this is the supplements all come in a handy little pouch, and they contain, as you'll see on the slide there, your essential vitamins. You've got magnesium, all those lovely adaptogens, so things like rhodiola, ashwagandha, and relaxing herbs as well. So it's a really nice mixture. I mean, it's just everything in one. And when I first tried it, the feedback I gave to New Mind was, this is like some like magic menopause supplement, but it doesn't say menopause. So it's a really amazing product. And I've just put on the next slide the ingredients that you'll find in there. So, I mean, this is great. You know, it's got really good levels of zinc. I mean, that's a lovely whacking dose. Good amount of iron, a really good amount of vitamin D. And they're usually the 3 products that when I get a multivitamin, I'll go, it's not enough. And you have to give more to top it up. So some of the ingredients that I particularly like, we've got ashwagandha, which is lovely for energy, mood, stress, immune function. We've also got rhodiola, which helps to rebalance the adrenals, supporting energy levels and our brain. Bacopa, this is fab for sleep. This is just an amazing product. Lemon balm, calming, relaxing, also with L-theanine. We've got lovely traditional remedies in there as well, lavender, chamomile, and passion flower, which is one of my absolute favorite ingredients ever. So really, really good for calming our nervous system. So that's just sound like one almighty sales pitch, which I suppose it is in some ways. But what I wanted to do was really select supplements that I use to show how you can think about supporting your menopause in a different way to the way that the media will, I suppose, encourage us to. You know, you don't necessarily need a really expensive menopause product. You need, because that's not necessarily going to work on the other stuff. So it's about laying those foundations first. Now, there are other products that you could use. You know, there are other products with adaptogens. You know, adaptogens are those lovely botanicals which help to rebalance our bodies. Also calming products, you know, you can get in separate supplements. But what I like about New Mind is it's got all of my favorite things in one sachet. There's no need for 10 bottles on the side in your kitchen. I mean, I have a fruit bowl which I chuck all my little New Mind sachets in. We take them in the morning. So there are other supplements out there, but I thought I'd showcase New Mind because I do love it myself. I do recommend it to clients, and it allows me to explain to you how I work in terms of supplementation, and it's not in the way that people think. Okay, so I hope that's given you some I suppose things to think about in terms of your supplements. You know, often less is more when it comes to supplements. You know, can you streamline the supplements you take if you're taking it already? Think about your hormone timeline. Where are you on that timeline? You know, what's going on for you? What is your unique story? And what do you need to support? You know, you may need to get some help or some guidance from a practitioner to do that. Brilliant. but just start thinking about it yourself, because thinking about symptoms and how you can fix the symptom isn't the best way to work, I don't think. I think you can do better for yourself, and hopefully work on those other areas as well. But stress is a really good place to start. And if you support your stress, you support your inflammation, you support your blood sugar balance and your insulin, and you can give your genetics a leg up as well, which is always good. And think about how you're eating, how you're digesting, absorbing, and are you going to the toilet every day? I mean, that is the winning formula, I think. So if you do want to have a look at New Mind, I've tried to be really clever and put a QR code so you can scan that from your phone. The website link is there, and they have very kindly shared a 20% discount with us. So you can use that as well. So the code is Charlotte20. I'll leave that on the screen for a few moments, but if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat. I'll hang around as long as there's still people here. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask. And thank you very much for your time this morning. I hope this has been helpful, given you some ideas, and hopefully helped you make a more informed decision about how to approach supplements, especially in menopause. And I say menopause, think about the man in your life. It's still the same stuff he needs to think about. He's still got estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, those hormones, not so much progesterone. But he has all those hormones as well. Think about his foundations. What does he need to work on? So this doesn't just apply to women going through menopause. This really does apply to everyone. Get your foundations right, and then whatever else you do will work much, much better. Thank you. In fact, what I'll do is I'm going to stop recording, and I will, you can talk to me if you'd like to. I'll just close that down.